PPT is visible. Screen is visible.
Yes, ma'am.
The question is why we need object-oriented programming. It is saying that object-oriented programming was developed because limitations were discovered in earlier approaches. What were the limitations of earlier approaches? Earlier approaches was procedural languages or functional programming or logic programming languages. Object-oriented languages came later after C, then C++ and Java. So what was the limitations of earlier languages? Why we need object-oriented programming? You are doing data structures with Java, right?
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
Java is continued. You studied it in first year and now your data structure lab is in Java. So what do you think? What is the disadvantage of C or procedural language that C++ or Java has overcome? Yes, means there are many advantages. One of the advantages is platform independence. Another can be it is suited for large programming. When you talk about functional or procedural programming, it was limited scope. But when programming in large is possible with object oriented, that was the main limitation. Yes, it supports modular programming only. So, modular programming, you can divide a large program into small modules and you can perform individually. Then you can cross check its workability, whether it is error free or runnable, and then you can merge all the modules in a big project. So, we talked about procedure oriented or procedural paradigmal language like C, Pascal, Fortran. So each statement in the language tells computer to do something. It's a sequential execution. One statement at a time. It will execute one statement, will move to the next line. So every statement will tell compiler to do something. Get input, add these inputs, whatever, divide by 6, display that output. It's a sequential way of programming. A programming procedural language is list of instructions. Like we studied Pascal in our unit number 2 and 3, we have studied how Pascal works. C language. So it's a set of instructions. In procedural language, we divide it into functions. If your program is getting lengthy and it is again and again you are repeating those instructions, make it as a module or function or a procedure and call that function. So procedural programs divided into functions. Each function has clearly defined purpose, clearly defined interface to other functions in the program. So I can have a function which will take input, I can have a function which will do some operations, and I can have a function which will display the output. So input can be from file, input can be from keyboard, input can be from camera images. So depending upon the what input I want, that input function will be used. So in procedural language, when you look at your program, a C program or Pascal program or Fortran, there is a main function. Execution always starts from main function. Then main can call different functions, function 1, 2, 3. These functions can call other functions too. So like this, structure of programming language is like top-down approach. It starts from main and will call other functions and get back to the main at the end. Control should get back to the main. In procedural language, in multifunctional program, important data items are placed as global. Instead of passing the data several times or for several functions, if I am working on 100 objects or 100 variables, instead of passing 100 variables, it's better to make them global. So as a when I work as a procedural programmer, so it is always easy instead of passing parameters to a function, make it global so that it is available to all the functions and no need to check its type while passing and then return that variable. Once it is a global copy, it is available to all. Each function may have its own local data. So these are the functions. This global data is available to all functions. If I have three variables, 1, 2, 3, these three variables, global variable 1 is available to all these four functions, second is also available. So if this function change this variable, this change is reflected to the other functions too. If value of variable, say I have a variable number of students and I place the value as say there are 8 students in class, n is equal to 8, and this function has changed the value. Another function, suppose the function is add, new student has entered, so the value is changed, now the value is 9. So other functions will also look at that value as 9. If one student is late, so now number of students are 8 again. So this 8 value is available to all the functions. So this is called side effect. If by mistake any function replaces that n is equal to 0, it will be 0 for all. So there are 8 students, and if I want to display information of those 8 students and value of n is 0, it will not work. Because for loop, if it is I equal to 0, I less than n, I plus plus, and value of n is 0, this display function will not work. Because one of the function has modified that value by mistake. So what are the drawbacks of procedural programming? Every function has complete access to global data. Data is not hidden. It is available to all. The new programmer can corrupt the data accidentally by creating a function. So if I create a function, I didn't know about which variables are global variables. I can use a variable and assign some value. Its original value may get replaced, and which can be an important value, like it can be a bank balance, and that value is corrupted, then there is a big risk. So we can access data of one function from other since there is no protection. Data is open to all, no protection. In large program, it is very difficult to identify what data is used by which function. So we are not working on 2, 3 functions. There are hundreds of functions. Like any mobile, you can take example of any mobile app. There are 100 use cases. So if user presses backspace, if user take any, for example, WhatsApp, you can type a new message, you can create your own group, you can add your status. So there are multiple ways to handle that app. So these are all use cases. And if all these things are working on the global data, it may create some problem. So in large program, it is very difficult to find out which data is used by which functions. And only access should be given to these functions and not these functions. It is not possible in procedural language. So similarly, if new data is to be added, all functions needed to be modified to access the data. For example, if I have written a program for 10 students, and if there are diploma students gets added, so my program should get modified to that number of students. So I should not be like I have to change each and every function for that. But it is not possible in procedural language. In procedural language, once data is modified, you have to modify every function. For example, if you have written a banking application, manual operations, let the user fill deposit slip, and then you are going to deposit amount in the user's account. And if that user has shifted from manual to ATM or Google Pay type of systems, so this will not supported by the existing functions. You need to modify those functions. If new data is added, all the functions need to be modified to access the data. Does not model real world problems very well. So due to these drawbacks, it is not able to modify or model real world problems. Real world means day-to-day problems. Day-to-day problems cannot be modeled as it is in procedural programming. And what are the advantages of characteristics of procedural programming? Why it is still used, say still popular programming language. Even if it has many limitations, we cannot say disadvantages, there are limitations. The characteristics is emphasis on doing things. So algorithm, if your algorithm is clean and clear, it is you can implement it as it is in procedural programming. Large programs are divided into smaller programs which are called functions. Most of the functions share global data. Data move openly around the system from function to function. Functions transform data from one form to other. So you can take a string as a data and return integer as a data. So you can convert data from one form to other form. Employ its a top-down approach in a program design. So you start from main and then main calls other functions. So it is a top-down approach. So in top-down decomposition, process of breaking the overall procedure or task into component or module. We can imagine a problem as a black box. Suppose any take a banking application or any application. So we assume what is input and what is output and black box. We didn't know what we have to do. So that is our main. Then we divide that black box into small parts. So take input, do some process, do output. Then we open that black box and define small modules. So all these modules are functions. So we start with a scratch and we reach till the end. So that is a top-down approach. And then subdivide each component module until the lowest level of detail has been reached. Examples are payroll system of a company can contain following modules or tasks. Payroll system, I have to pay to my employees. What it made? Master file where there is attendance of all employees, how many employees present throughout the month or they have taken leaves, if the leaves are paid leaves or earned leaves. Then earning, what is their salary per month. Then deduction, how much amount should I deduct for income tax purpose or for any loan they have to pay. Then taxes should be cut from salary. Net earning, so total their pay scale minus this deduction will be net earning and then print the report. So all these can be a payroll. I have to pay to someone. So to do these things, these are the different modules or tasks. So these can be a separate functions. So if I enter a employee name or employee ID, payslip should get printed. That is what I want. Now that is about object-oriented procedural programming. Object-oriented programming has totally new approach. We always, as a means when we start from C to C++ or C to Java, we have in our mind C type syntax, and we always try to write main first, and then write a class, and then write the object. But this is not the correct way. Whenever the problem statement is given to you, go through that problem statement, find out the objects. So that is the first thing. You have to find out minute details, what you exactly want. So what are the objects? Objects are nothing but real world entities. For example, mouse, speaker, camera, whatever, pen, all the objects from your problems, just underline those objects. Then try to create a class based on those objects, similar type of objects, can be a class. Then try to find out relationship between these classes. So you have suppose a class student, class teacher, class infrastructure. Then teacher should have infrastructure, teacher should have a class, there should be a communication between teacher and student. Then you have to build the relationship, that is inheritance. You have to build an hierarchy. Now your class is ready and you can use that class with its functions and objects to any application that you want. Suppose I want to take a test, if I want to display a mark sheet, or if I want to arrange extra guest session. So I have a class ready with me, class student is there, class teacher is there, infrastructure is there. So I can use these three classes to arrange extra lectures or arrange tests. So first you have to create objects, classes and its relations, that is inheritance. And then you can talk about application, how you can use these classes for an application. So in object-oriented programming, it was introduced to overcome flaws in procedural programming. That was data was global, it is accessible to all, and you cannot extend it to support extra or additional functionalities. Lack of reusability, maintainability was the main issue. fundamental idea behind object-oriented language is combined into single unit, data and functions that operate on the data. So that is called object. So we talked about object. So for example, these are different objects. Each object should have data and functions operating on that data. And objects can communicate with each other by calling those functions. Characteristics of object-oriented programming: emphasis on data rather than procedures. Data is most important. It is hidden. There are access specifiers associated with data. Private data is accessible to only functions of that class. Protected is accessible to that class and the class which inherits that class. Public is available to all the classes, and default, which is specified in Java, is accessible to all the classes in the same package, whether it is inherited or not. Functions that operate on the data of object are tied together in a data structure. So class is a new data structure like arrays or structure or integer character. So class has come up as a new data structure. It is called abstract base class, ABC. So it has data and functions encapsulated together as a team or group. Data is hidden and cannot be accessed by external function. If you create a variable or access specifier for data as private, it is not accessible in main. Main is outside the class. Data is hidden, cannot be accessed by external function. Object communicate with each other by functions. If I want to call a object of student class or any function from the student class need to be called. It follows bottom-up design. Now what is bottom-up design? It is reverse to top-down. Lower level tasks are first carried out and then integrated to provide a solution to a single problem. You create objects and then build and whatever you want, model with the help of those objects, like building blocks. Lower level structures of programs are evolved first, then high level structures are created. It promotes code reuse because you have those objects ready. You can use those objects for any other application too. It is not compulsory that once it is created, used for this. For example, you might have seen calculator. It is available for any Windows version, or calendar. That utility is available with any Windows version or Notepad. So these are once created and used or reused multiple times. It may allow unit testing. Means every object is tested and diagnosed and it is runnable model and then it can be added. When we talked about object-oriented programming, these concepts are must. You should know what is object, what is a class, data abstraction, data encapsulation, inheritance, polymorphism, dynamic binding, and message passing. So by data abstraction, abstraction has different meanings. It can be a control abstraction or data abstraction. We are talking about data abstraction. We want data should be hidden. The object has attributes and operations. The object is an entity which has state, behavior, and identity. So any object should be uniquely identified from other objects. So it should have its unique identity. For example, if we take a student, so student should have roll number. Each student should get uniquely identified. Even name is same, but roll numbers are different. So identity. Then attributes. Attributes means what are the properties or the variables associated with that object. For example, name, roll number, mail ID, subjects, year, semester, etc. And then operations, what student can do as an object, what the activities that student can do, curricular activities, co-curricular activities, etc. So that those are operations. So attributes are variables, operations is a behavior. Objects are basic runtime entity of an object-oriented system. It is the basic entity. From your project, you have to first search for objects. This is the first step. When you start working on object-oriented programming, if you have to build your project with object-oriented programming, first step is to find out the objects. They may represent a person, a place, or atom that program must handle. When a program is executed, objects interact by sending and receiving messages. For example, if you have two classes, customer and account, in a program, the customer object may send a message to account object requesting bank balance. So I want to check my bank balance. I'm a customer. So I will call a function from account check balance if there is a function check balance. What is a class? Class is group of similar objects. Classes, for example, we know memory is not allocated for the class, memory is allocated for the object. So class is just a blueprint or description of the object, how object should be. So classes are user-defined data type. It behaves like built-in data type of a programming language. You can create your own class, class complex or class student or class teacher. That is, you are creating a data type. If I create a class student and when I create object student S1 comma S2, so it is similar to creating objects of inbuilt variable like integer x1 comma x2. Object contains code and data which can be made user defined type using a class. Objects are variables of a class, or object is called instance of a class. Once a class has been defined, we can create any number of objects of that class. A class is collection of objects of similar type. Do you know what is the syntax of a class? Next term is encapsulation. Encapsulation means hiding data and functions together. This concept is called encapsulation. Object is also functions and data together. Data and functions wrapped together is object. Or class is also object and functions wrapped together. But the concept of wrapping data and functions together is called encapsulation as a one single entity. Encapsulation is first pillar or principle of object-oriented programming. There are four main pillars: abstraction, encapsulation, polymorphism, and inheritance. So encapsulation is first and most important pillar of OOP. Encapsulation is a process of binding data, that is variables and its properties, and functions, that is methods, into single unit. Class is example of encapsulation. So don't get confused with the definition of class, definition of object, and definition of encapsulation. Example of encapsulation is class. Again, a real life example can be a medical store. Let's say you have to buy some medicines. You go to the medical store and ask chemist for the medicines. Note that we have highlighted some words: medicines, chemist. Only the chemist has access to the medicines. We cannot enter and choose our own medicines like we do in our malls. We choose our accessories. We go and choose whatever we want. But we cannot do that in medical store. So access to that medicines is only with the chemist. The chemist know the medicines to give it to you. You may not able to read the handwriting of the doctors also. So that access is again given to the chemist. This reduces the risk of you taking any medicine that is not intended for you. If that particular medicine is not available, chemist can see every medicine has the combination of some drugs, and there are multiple companies with the same combination. They can sell those drugs. If this particular medicine is not available, they can suggest you alternate medicine if it is available. But only chemist can do that. The chemist has the access of those medicines. So chemist is where is the data and where is the method here? Which is the data and which is the method? And where is the encapsulation? So medicines is what? Data or data, correct. Medicines is a data and chemist is getting you those medicines. So chemist has, or a chemist is a function. And you are an outsider, you are not allowed to enter it. That is the encapsulation. Medical store is encapsulation, it is like a class. Chemist is a function and medicine is your data. Medicine is member variable, chemist is member method, and you are external application or piece of code. So outside code can access public instance or public variables and public methods, but cannot access private instance or private methods. that is accessible to that class methods. So through encapsulation, data is not accessible to outside world and only those functions which are wrapped in a class can access it. Encapsulation solves the problem at implementation level. We have talked about this abstract. What is the difference between abstraction and encapsulation? Abstraction is also data hiding. Abstraction also doesn't allow data to be seen from outside world. Then what is the difference? The difference is here. Encapsulation solves the problem at implementation level and abstraction solves the problem at design level. We'll come to abstraction. A class can specify how accessible each of its member, that is variable, properties and methods is to code outside of the class. So you can specify with the help of access specifiers which methods are allowed, which can be public methods, which can be private methods like this. So encapsulation means hiding the important features of a class which is not being needed to be exposed outside of the class and exposed only necessary things of a class. Here hidden part of the class acts as encapsulation and exposed part of the class is act as abstraction. Now we know what is abstraction. Hiding the details, conveying in brief or telling only what is expected you should know. In a first lecture, I cannot cover entire syllabus. I have to go step by step. So whatever required for you for T1 or T2, only that part we go through it. So that is conveying in brief. Extra details are hidden. So those hidden details is called encapsulation and those exposed details are called abstraction. So abstraction refers representation of necessary features without including more details or explanation. Like here I know when I press this button, LCD will start. But I'm not interested in how this wireless communication happens, how it is connected to my system, how my PPT is not able, I'm not able to see on the screen and it is displayed there. And what is the resolution, what is the aspect ratio, what are the number of points per inch. I'm not interested in that. I just want my PPT should get displayed on LCD. So this is abstraction. I know just to press this button. Everything is hidden, the working is hidden inside it. So abstraction is refer representation of necessary features without including more details or explanation. Abstraction is very, very useful. Whatever the needed means as a user want you should not ask user to go through multiple manuals to work on your project. So your project must be user friendly. Your which app you are using for suppose scanning, you want to install an app, or if you want to convert your images into a video, there are multiple apps, but you choose user friendly app. There should be minimum, you just able to select those photos, it should allow you to crop or change the brightness, used to apply some filters, and then you should able to insert a good song and then convert it to a video. But it should be user friendly. How you choose apps? There are multiple apps, but depending upon minimum ads should be there, user friendly. It should allow multiple options. So and extra details are hidden. Should not you should not able to convert it to MP4 file or you should not check which type of images, whether it is JPG, BMP or PNG. Any type of image it should take and convert it to video. So extra details must be hidden, then only any application is sellable, it is more user friendly. Data abstraction in a program, that is a design technique that relies on separation of interface and implementation, and that is the thing that Java does. Java separate its interface and implementation. You can write class and its hierarchy in one Java file and main program in another Java file. So main is what? Interface or application. And its implementation is where you have written a class and its hierarchy. And that class and its hierarchy you can use for any other application too. For example, if you have written a class of complex number, and there are operations like addition, subtraction, multiplication, division of complex number, you can write a main program to call these functions and check whether this is working perfectly. Or you can use that class complex number to solve any physics problem where there is a complex operations are needed. You may not need all operations, but some of the operations you can call by importing complex class. For example, we are importing the scanner class to read data from. The scanner class has other multiple operations to do. Or in Matplotlib, Python assignment, we are using it to draw the charts that we want. But it can be used for any other application. So we are just pyplot, matplotlib.pyplot. We are using only one module from matplotlib. There can be multiple modules. Similarly, you can create a class with its hierarchy, that is functions and variables, and create your own library. So there is a separation of interface and implementation. So when you press a key on your keyboard, the character appears on a screen. You need to know only this. So if I press A will appear. If I press B will appear. But how exactly it works based on the electronically is not needed. That is hidden. This is called abstraction in simple words. So another example is like a TV remote. Just I explained you about LCD. So when I press plus, it will change the volume. So we talked about encapsulation, abstraction. Next is inheritance. The term inheritance, you know, it inherits, you have something available, you want to extend its capabilities. So instead of starting from scratch or again working on that module, you can reuse it. You can create a new class by inheriting this old one. For example, this is a class A, class B, and class C. Grandfather, father, and child. So there can be a hierarchy. Or a vehicle. Car is a vehicle, truck is also a vehicle. There is electric car and petrol car. So when you go downwards, it is becoming more specific. Vehicle is a too general concept. It can be a two-wheeler, four-wheeler, or any type of vehicle. It can be a bicycle, it can be a car, it can be an aeroplane, any type of vehicle. So all the properties a vehicle can show, that is represented by vehicle class. But when you talk about a car, so you know the cars, so all type of cars, it should include into a car class. Then electric car, again there is a specific type should be there for electric car. So the mechanism of deriving new class from old class is called inheritance or derivation. Old class is called base class or parent class or super class. Old class is called base class, parent class or super class. Child class is called as derived class, child class or subclass. Inheritance is also most powerful feature of object-oriented programming. So you know what is inheritance is in case of family. Suppose father is tall and dark, mother is short and fair. So son can be tall and fair. It can inherit some properties from mother, some properties from father. Through effective use of inheritance, you can save lots of time in your programming and reduce errors. You can reuse already compiled, interpreted, or running class to create your own class, which is in turn will increase quality of work and productivity. There are multiple types of inheritance, mainly 5 types: single inheritance, multi-level inheritance, multiple inheritance, hierarchical inheritance, and multi-level inheritance. So we have seen all these types in detail. If you are not able to recall it, go through those slides available. With examples we have seen. Polymorphism. Polymorphism is very general concept, and it is not only related to object-oriented programming. You can see polymorphism feature in any language. So we know that it's a Greek word. Poly means many, morph means forms. Whatever showing multiple forms is called polymorphism. So plus operator is used to add two numbers. It is also used to concatenate two strings. So plus when you call plus operator and you pass integer values, it will add those values and give you an integer result. If you pass two strings, the plus operator will act as concatenation and combine those two strings. In C++, it is called operator overloading. It is by default in Python. Same way, functions can be overloaded. Sum is not taking any argument and can calculate the sum. You can pass two arguments, it will calculate sum of these two elements. If you pass three arguments, it will calculate the sum of these three arguments. But in this case, you have to provide these three functions, sum without any parameter, with two parameters, with three arguments, that is function overloading. For example, shape. Uh, Shape is a class, and when you call that print function with circle, it should print circle. When you call print function with triangle, it should print triangle. If you calculate print function with rectangle, it should print rectangle. Now your print is same, exactly same signature. We are not passing different parameters, but it is called with different objects. If you call it with circle object, the circle print function get called and it will draw a circle or print a circle. So this is called method overriding. Method overriding. So two types of polymorphism. Overloading is called abstract polymorphism or ad hoc polymorphism, and overriding is called pure polymorphism. Dynamic binding. Binding is nothing but a link. Binding is a relationship between procedure call and code to get executed. When you call that function, function should be there in memory, and the link between that function call from where the function is called and that is a control link. We have seen in abstraction or procedure abstract records, control link and static link. So if that control link is known at compile time, it is called static binding. If it is known at runtime, it is called dynamic binding. It is a process of linking function call to the actual code of a function at runtime. Dynamic binding, the actual code to be executed is not known at compile time. Compiler doesn't know where the function, which function to be called, because whether to call function of a circle, function, print function of a circle, rectangle or triangle, depending upon which object is calling that function. And if that object or you are passing some address, or if it is an indirect reference, reference is passed, then it is difficult for a compiler to resolve it at compile time. So it will get resolved at runtime, and so it is called dynamic binding. Or it is also called as late binding because it happens at runtime. Compiler comes to know at runtime that which function of sum will be called, either 2 argument or 3 argument, depending upon how many values you pass. And if you pass 2 parameters, it will call some function with 2 parameters. If you pass 3 values, it will call a sum function with 3 values. Next term is message passing. So again, only the term is different. Whatever is done is the same. When you call, or you cannot modify any variable without calling a function. If I want to change balance or I want to change marks of a student, I have to call that particular function. So when you call a function, it is called message passing. And when you return from that function, then it is message received. So send an object, give your name, and it will give your name as a return value. So object can communicate with each other by passing messages. So message passing means call a function. Same as people passing messages with each other. Objects can send and receive messages or information. Message passing involves following basic steps. Creating a class that defines object and their behavior. That is the first step. You have to create a class. Then create objects of that class, and then call the methods with that class. Establish communication between objects means call the functions of that class. Concept of message passing make it easier to talk about building systems that directly model or simulate the real world counterpart. How we communicate with each other if we consider ourselves as an object. where I want to communicate. I want to communicate with bank. I want to communicate with my department or something. So just imagine that that is one object and another object, and how that communication should be. Those are the functions. So any real world problem you can convert into object oriented. For example, if there are two classes, product and order, suppose I want to order something from any online portal, the object of the product class can communicate with the object of order class by sending the request of placing order. I want to place order. So what is the quantity? What is the rate? I want a gift wrap or not. Depending upon that, it will send me the amount. Once I pay the amount, order will get delivered. So this is a message passing. Place order and it will do things and order will get placed. So we have management object, faculty object and student object. So management object wants a performance from a teacher, faculty. Faculty wants performance from a student, and student are expecting results from the management. So this, so this is a one way of communication. And now what are the benefits of object-oriented programming? User can create new data type or user-defined data type by making a class. Class is user-defined data type. So you can create your own data type with the help of class. Code can be reused using inheritance. Data can be hiding from outside world by using encapsulation. And operators or functions can be overloaded by using polymorphism. You can use same function or operator can be used by for multitasking. To avoid again make program readable to the user, instead of as a user I should not remember so many names. If I want to place order, the function should be place order. It should not depending upon what order I am placing. Or print, I should just say print, and whatever I pass to that print function it should get printed. If I say draw, whatever I pass, it should draw that particular thing. I should not remember draw triangle, draw rectangle, draw whatever the shape is. That's why we need a single name. Why we need function overloading or function overriding? That was the question once a student asked me. I can use a function with accept 1, accept 2, accept 3, accept 4. Why to overload that accept function? Why there is a need to the same function name for overloading and overriding? To make a program more readable, you have to use the same name. That's why polymorphism is needed. And where you can use object-oriented programming, areas of application, any real-time system. Any real-time system you can model with the help of object-oriented programming. Simulation and modeling. So if something is on paper or some hardware device is there and you want to simulate it, how, for example, in case of if you want to join a driving class, that you can simulate using object-oriented programming. You can use object-oriented database, hypertext, hypermedia, expert text. Java is mainly internet language. You can create web pages or internet applications using Java. AI and expert system, neural networks, parallel programming. Java also supports parallel programming. In next semester, we will introduce to what is parallel programming means. Decision support system, office automation system, and some mechanical softwares like CIM, CAM, CAD, designing softwares. Like. So you name the thing and you can do it with the help of object-oriented programming. So that's it for today. Tomorrow, next lecture onwards, we'll start with object-oriented with 5 things. It was very theoretical lecture, but I can't help.